Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. Jose Ferreira with CDW. I manage the Southeast for security for CDW. Now, people are wondering probably why physical security in a cybersecurity conference. Anybody want to guess why?
Access control software, SDRs, Linnell?
Yeah, that's part of it. Physical security.
They're all IP-based systems.
Yeah, exactly. They're all becoming IP-based systems. So what used to be facilities concerns is no longer facilities concerns. It is now becoming a cybersecurity concern. And we'll talk some about that. So physical security at its foundation is really focused on protecting people, premises, and locations. Now, what has been historically been focused on is theft on IP, vandalism, loitering, other nuisances, also injuries and loss of life, and a lot of legal insurance claims. But it's always been reactive. That's always been historical. So if any incident happened, what did corporations have to do? They have to go back and look at their videos. They have to figure out what happened, look at access control logs. That's how it was in the past. And believe it or not, you could sometimes circumvent, like for example, slip and falls. There are professional slip and fall people out there that will go to restaurants and purposely fall to try to get legal claims. But what they do is they'll file a report at the hospital and then wait 3-4 months, wait till the videos are no longer available, and then file a lawsuit. And so it does have some concerns. So what's happening is the evolution over the last 5 years or so, and with AI being embedded now into a lot of the new modern security platforms, that now instead of being reactive, it's now becoming more proactive. So now it can look in for detection, be able to try to find before anything gets stolen, before any injuries or loss of life, before any insurance claims could be filed. They try to be proactive and ahead of the game. But that does introduce some areas that have concerns, privacy, for example. Everybody's concerned about biometrics and facial recognition, about capturing that and how it's used, especially for corporations. But the reality is there are no privacy laws other than a few states, California, Colorado, Illinois, or some, that have passed anything related to facial recognition and biometrics. But the nice thing about the new modern systems is that you can control, based on state, based on location, what you could be captured. So you don't have to necessarily capture facial recognition. You don't have to necessarily capture biometric information. So you can reduce the privacy impact for your employees and for visitors. Our corporations could also have their own policies around privacy, for example. So, for example, no corporation will have cameras in bathrooms, right? No one. But that doesn't mean that you can't have something in place. You can have maybe a sensor in bathrooms to maybe detect if there's a shooting incident or somebody yelling for help, so that they can notify the right people at the offices to come in and assist those individuals. And also, people always think of physical security as focused on the safety, but also what's been happening recently is organizations are leveraging physical security to actually increase productivity and also potentially increase revenue. For example, there's actually a bakery, a large chain of bakery chain, that actually has been using it to monitor their display cases. And what they noticed is that there are certain items that were sold out after 3 p.m. and it wasn't being filled. What was happening was the kitchens closed at 3 p.m. and they'd stopped baking. So from 3 to 8, they weren't making any money on a lot of their bakery items. So they changed their hours, they modified the schedule of the cooks, and they were able to increase their revenue by 10% just because of what they saw and monitored on the cameras. So physical security, again, is no longer just for safety purposes. It can also be used to improve productivity and efficiency. But the key thing is modernizing the systems. Right now, a lot of organizations have a lot of older hardware, a lot of analog cameras. They may have systems that are 5-10 years old. They're not integrated. They're not talking to each other. Cameras are not talking to access control systems. They may not have the same system at every location. It could be disparate. They may have certain vendors in certain locations, other vendors in others. So what that happens is it's very costly to manage these solutions because now you have separate management consoles a higher operational cost to maintain and support these systems. And also potentially increases your gaps in coverage because you can't see everything on one pane of glass. But that's changing. So what's happening now is with some of the new solutions coming out, you don't have to do a complete rip and replace. You don't have to replace all your cameras at once, all your access control systems at once. What you can do is you could do a migration, you could do a phased approach. See, there are solutions out there available that will ingest and able to handle, I won't say every single solution in hardware out there, but a good chunk that you can start putting together into a single pane of glass. You could convert analog data into digital data to do some intelligence on it. So then you could do migration at over time as you are now managing through one console, replacing the hardware for more modern hardware that has higher resolution, higher intelligence, to be able to then reduce your costs even further over time. So again, just want to make sure understand that physical security doesn't mean it's a complete rip and replace. You can if you want, if you could afford it, but the reality is you probably have to phase it over time. So what is physical security nowadays? You know, physical security nowadays encompasses quite a few areas. You know, so you could now have things that's to monitor loitering, people that are hanging around around your facilities, that might be leaving packages, that could be potential terrorist threats around, and detect that. It could handle your door access control for employees, so employees have access to certain buildings but not other buildings. It could handle visitors coming in. It could monitor perimeter so that, for example, somebody checks in, employee checks in, goes through the door, but then when once it gets in, somebody's trying to tailgate that person. So perimeter monitoring could monitor that and notify authorities as necessary. There's gate controls. There's occupancy tracking. What is occupancy tracking? So that's one thing where it can help you improve efficiencies. Again, it's not just safety procedures. So with occupancy tracking, you can monitor specific rooms. Are conference rooms being utilized? Are they, if they are, then lights turn on, HVAC systems are enabled, or they decrease temperature depending on the amount of people are in the room. They could also help you with efficiencies. If some rooms or your conference rooms are being busy, it could notify facilities that hey, you need to build out more conference rooms. Or for example, you could also even do something as simple as cleaning schedules. If rooms are not being utilized, you update the cleaning schedule for that day, let your cleaners know, don't bother these rooms, just focus on these rooms. You know, there are environmental sensors. So that could also detect, you know, the airflows. It could detect, you know, potential natural gas. It could also detect, for example, people are vaping. People think vaping is not smoking, but it is. So it could detect people are in certain rooms and vaping, and managing visitors. Now, the heat mapping and people movement is an interesting trend. So because, again, with modern systems and everything being digitized and AI now being embedded, if you see a suspicious person, you could actually click on that person and it would automatically, again, not all systems do this, but some vendors do, it will automatically now detect that person across everything it captured, across all the cameras, not even in that same location. If they see that same person in other locations, it will automatically detect that person. And if it came from a vehicle, you could track that vehicle and see where that vehicle was within whatever it captured. So within minutes or seconds, you could actually create a whole incident trail of what that person did, how they entered the facilities, what they did in the facilities, and be able to now have something to show to authorities if necessary. Before, that could have taken days, if not weeks or months, to capture all that information. So now you could speed that up and do that in literally in seconds. But how did this all kind of come together? So, you know, you have all the sense type of devices. You have your cameras, you have your microphones, the rest, and sensors. They all have some built-in intelligence, but then they're also leveraging the cloud to add the AI components. And then they could then act based on what's been detected. It could be something as simple as, for example, you got a bunch of kids loitering around outside. Well, then your camera detects that on the camera itself, and then automatically connect to the intercom and just make an announcement. Please leave the area. You're on private property, or authorities will be coming. Something like that will usually have most of the people leave. It could be something as sophisticated and as needed as, for example, active shooter events. If somebody is going to a property, it could be a school property or it could be a commercial property, and they detect that they are carrying a gun on their hand or they're having a gun somewhere on their body, or they look suspicious because they might have heavy coat on a very warm day. Things of that nature. There's parameters you could define. And once it's detected, then it could immediately lock down. Immediately contact the access control badges and lock down the facility. It could notify the local administrators that there might be an active shooter presence. Then it could also, with digital signage, go ahead and make an announcement at the facility saying, hey, lockdown procedures, there's a suspicious person on site, and then contact local authorities. And this could happen within seconds. Yeah.
In the sense section, arrest, what's your definition?
So like you could have like the blue lights, like sometimes like at train stations or at universities or school systems, there's usually like a blue light where you click on and it will automatically light and notify that, hey, so I'm scared, somebody's following me, there's somebody happening. And once you do that, what can happen is, again, with the right cameras in the area, automatically capture what's going on, find the identifying person that may be chasing that person, keep track of what's going on so you can notify the authorities, hey, this is where the person has been chasing, this is where they are at, please follow them and get them to safety. So again, the whole concept is, with the modernization of physical security, is no longer everything is disparate, everything is doing on its own. It is now becoming they're communicating, because now they're IP based, they're communicating with each other, they're talking to each other, and you can now leverage the power of the integration so that you could prevent, again, not only for safety, but also potentially for helping with your productivity. Some things that could be done, somebody is showing up a construction site, a worker. They don't have their hard hat on, they don't have their vest on. That's a safety concern. So what could be happening? You can notify the local manager of the facility saying, hey, this individual doesn't have their gear on. That manager will immediately call the employee, say, get your butt back, put on your hard hat, put on your vest. It could help you in manufacturing. It could take a look at production lines. If seeing somebody's lifting up boxes that they shouldn't, if somebody is putting their hands in conveyor belts that they shouldn't, if they are seeing slowness in production lines, to notify the plant manager, hey, that assembly line is slowing based on historical trends, you could help figure out what's going on and help improve on that. So again, the whole way, it's no longer the old ways of doing things. We are now modernizing to the point of where you can leverage physical security to improve your safety, but also improve your operations. And this is not something that's typically easy. It can be complicated because, again, every organization has very disparate systems. And sometimes we don't even know who manages what systems. It could be the plant owners managing their systems. It could be facilities managing the building systems. So being able to integrate and be able to prevent through video surveillance, access control, sensors, and video intelligence does take some time and investment to figure out what are the right solutions, how to assess it, set it up, configure it, and do a rollout, and then also support it moving forward. So this is where CDW typically could help in that regard. I didn't want to go too do PowerPoint by death. I just want to hit the key notes, and I can leave it open for questions if anybody has any questions about physical security and the direction it's going.
I have a question about the physical security and access controls. I understand right now there's not a lot of solutions, as you said, that encompass all of them at once. I know only a Vigilant, the NEL, and UCI probably.
So I'm sorry, but what's?
I'm sorry. Can you name drop one of the solutions that provides AI control?
So like Verkada, but see, Verkada typically is like the Apple. They create their own hardware and their own software, and so they're like the Apple version of the physical security. But then you got organizations like Genetec, where it can ingest and manage disparate solutions, access control, cameras, sensors, whatever, and be able to potentially manage it and also ingest it for added intelligence. So it really depends on what direction you want to go to, what is the right, and again, those are two examples, there's others, but it's just a matter of where you're at in your journey.
What do you think about Mercury controllers?
What's that?
Mercury controllers.
What about them, I guess?
What's your opinion of that?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't really have much of an opinion. I mean, I know it's being used, but it's not really being used much. But again, that's where the physical team will probably be able to tell, but I haven't had that many situations requiring that. But we have a whole physical security team that could probably answer that a little deeper.
So everything you're kind of talking about here is you need to put your cameras, don't care about who vendor the camera. I need to be able to see that image on run it into an IP system that can be controlled and integrated with AI and other functionalities. Is that the big question? Because you talk about like Mercatas and the other vendors out there, they're building their systems that are pre-built for it.
Yeah.
But you talk about a large conference center like this and everything of that sort. They're not going to replace hundreds
Right.
of cameras every time they need to
Right.
change. They want to modernize in steps.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. You're not going to do a complete rip. I mean, very few are going to do complete rip and replace. But that's where if you want to go consider more of an Android approach, where hey, you can be able to manage the disparate systems. That's where like a Genetech comes in, where they can not only say they can manage every, depending if it's too old and antiquated. Sorry, but if it's within certain parameters, they can manage those solutions through APIs or other methods, and then they could also ingest the data. And even if it's analog, they could digitize that data and be able to add some level of intelligence. Is it going to be as deep as if it was their own hardware or more modern hardware? Like if it's more of the latest cameras from Axis or other solutions? No, but at least it's better than what you've got now. And you could then eventually move on to more advanced solutions.
The big goal there is turning from analog video to digital video that can be dissected
And add some, and analyze. But again, you're going to be limited because some of those analog cameras, their resolution are going to be very too low. And and the intelligence you could add onto it is going to be kind of limited. Again, the more modern you get, the better capabilities you're going to get. But doesn't mean that you can't get something out of what you got now until you're ready to replace them.
So how do you deal with the challenge of capacity for this?
Capacity in terms of?
I've just been recently having to be involved in a project. It's 1,600 cameras, 25 frames a second, 45 days retention, H.264. That's 4 to 6 petabytes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with some of our clients are using it or using cloud.
You can't.
You can. I mean, you're gonna.
Afford the bandwidth to send this video.
You're going to have to filter. I mean, again, that's where if you have more amount of systems, a lot of the on-camera capabilities on some of these newer cameras, they have the built-in intelligence to filter out a lot of the unnecessary. If it doesn't look like it's something that is, if it's dead, there's no activity going on, why store that? Only store if there's certain activity that detects and uploads that. There's built-in intelligence, but again, it's the more modern systems that have that capability.
This doesn't even, I mean, they're just purchasing the pieces.
Right, but
And I was like, okay, could we do H.265? I mean, that's a corporate decision, whether they want to use it or not. We're not going to get 50% savings. I've done my research. It's like, you can pretty much count on 25% savings. The rest is mileage varies based
Right.
on which.
But it also goes down to policy too. What is your policy for retention and so forth? Can we modify that? Maybe for specific locations, incidents. But again, that's where our physical control, security control team can figure out and help out, figure out what is the right direction. How can we reduce potentially the size of the ingestion of the data?
And if I could kind of add to that, I think the big thing you talk about that when you talk about data is you're storing it all raw, but just like you talk about deduplication, that's the big
Yeah.
thing. This all fixes.
You're right. And again, if there's no activity going on, you don't really need to store it.
Right, but I mean, again, H.264, 265, you only have one frame. Then you have to change this to the next frame. I mean, we're not talking about a huge amount of change, even if you're doing continuous, right?
Yeah. Again, I think yeah.
I mean, these capacities are kind of outrageous because yes, they want a AI card. They want cards in every box again, this is only 45 days. I come from worlds where it was required 1 year.
Yeah, we have a client right now. We have a client right now that is storing 2 years worth. But again, they're doing a lot of reduction.
Drop your 25 frames to 15.
You know,
type of things when you do your
and again, they're going more to modern systems, modern cameras, where it can do a lot of the, I guess, all intents and purposes, dedupe, at the camera, so then it doesn't have to upload everything that it's capturing.
But where's your risk then?
Because again, it's the intelligence that are that's again, that's the intelligence. That's part of the policy. That's part of the the design is if it's not detecting any activity, then the risk is pretty low. Don't necessarily capture it. If it's detecting activity of people just moving, it's one of those balancing acts. It is, and that's where the physical security team could come in and help you figure out what is the right approach.
As far as I understand, a lot of more modern cameras have AI built in themselves, so they
Yeah.
can label data through on-wave.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, but those are the modern. But it's going to take time for organizations to replace their cameras.
also, I know probably it's not, again, a question for your team, but do you know any of the systems that scale horizontally, not vertically, in terms of the access control? I have around 10,000 doors on the access control,
Right.
and our system just dies periodically.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the bigger vendors are able to handle that, but again, that would be part of the team to be able to answer that. So,
Secure doesn't bifurcate.
Modernization of equipment, are you seeing better deployment of physical
Because we work with them now,
tamper-proofing and logical tamper-proofing
then
of the actual equipment?
yes, yeah, because I mean, once they detect, I mean, even somebody approaching the camera itself, if it's not authorized, it will automatically alert the administrators. So yeah, there's a lot more tamper-proofing.
The functionality you mentioned about detecting like active shooters, is that something that's active that people are using right now?
So, schools mostly.
Is there like a known false positive rate and like what happens?
There is some false positive rates. I mean, that's where the administrators and the authorities, because they get the images, again, depending on the local districts, they get the images and they can make a determination, but usually they're better safe than sorry. So there's been false positives, but usually people understand the situation.
So, years ago, the standard was you had an NVR, it had a certain disk capacity, you kept adding more NVRs, based on the number of cameras and spread them out, right? Now it seems that with this capacity, archiving has to be more part of the conversation than it
Yes.
was in the past. So, I've seen a lot of Hexagon and Milestone, and a few others, their best practices are a really high-speed set of disks for what they call, I guess, live drives. A few hours, rotated out to some not quite as high performance drives as an intermediate, and then pick your permanent archive so that you essentially have 4 hours to 7 days to.
They follow like the old standard backup, like the 3 tiers, hot, cold. But again, if you're doing on-premise, that is an option as well. If you're doing on-premise, it's just we're seeing more organizations moving to the cloud, and so it's a little different. But again, I apologize. I mean, the physical security team could answer a lot of these questions a little bit deeper. And if you have interest, I could definitely get your contact, and I could have them. You could reach out to them, talk to them some more about your situation.
Figure it out, because I mean, this is all new equipment, millions of dollars, and you're like, not sure.
Right, and then.
Things are said that I'm going, hold on, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't even, that's 1 + 1 = 3 is what you're telling me.
Well, again,
No, that's not right.
it's evolving. I mean, it's happening. It's more of the modern, again, more of organizations that are fully developed and more into modern systems. But definitely I could have my physical team to talk about that some more deep for you if you want.